And I will probably put you on mute once you start.
Okay. Welcome to Construction Aid at STLS. This session is being recorded for later viewing. We're going to start out with just me showing you where to get all of the resources on construction aid specific to the STLS process for filling out construction aid applications. So you can either use this search bar here and type construction aid. Oh, here we are. Or you can use your address bar and type construction hyphen aid. That'll bring you to the construction aid website. Here's where all of our construction aid information lives. It includes the content of what needs to come in an application from your library to STLS, the notice of intent to apply form. This form we'll get into a little bit more detail in just a minute. A basic facility plan. This could be developed by a building professional. It can be a formal master plan for your facility. It can also be a very simple, first we want to do this, next year we want to do that form. We have made a simple template for your use, if that is helpful. You do need to come to the application with a contractor bid or quote. You only need to submit one to me, and it can be informal. But knowing that this will be the amount of money that your allocation is based on, you'll want to get a contractor bid that's pretty accurate. So even though you're only submitting one to me, you may still want to, during this phase of the application process, get as many as you can. So you have a really good idea of how much the project will cost before you make the request. State Historic Preservation Office approval is for if your library is more than 50 years old. There are items within a library that's more than 50 years old that don't need SHPO approval. They include interior mechanicals that aren't going to disrupt any viewable space. So that's like your HVAC system, as long as it's not making a new hole in the building somewhere. Plumbing, toilets, most of what happens in a bathroom can be done without SHPO approval. Here's the timeline. I want to draw your attention to how long the grant process actually takes from application to check in hand for the library. We're having this meeting now the last day of April and ideally the last day of winter. And I need your initial packet returned to me by July 2nd. That's just the first phase of applying for construction aid. That's what is used for our board to recommend an allocation of funds. You also have to do a presentation to our board. This says the week of July 9th. The exact day is actually July 16th, so I'll update the website soon. The next day, the full board meets. They take the recommendations of the panel of trustees that viewed your presentation, and they recommend allocations to the state. So whatever that amount of money is that you asked for, and the board says, yes, you get a full 75% match of $200,000. By Friday, September 7th, the information that you've already used to apply to STLS for that recommendation of funding has to be submitted online to the state library in a portal at eservices.niced.gov/LD grants, library development grants. We'll also get a little bit more into that. Once that's there, I review it one more time before it goes to the state library and the Division of Library Development. the Division of Library Development has until January to forward those applications to the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, also known as DASNY. So when you hear DLD, we're talking about the State Library and the Division of Library Development. And when you hear DASNY, you're talking about a non-library specific agency that handles all building and capital project funds across the state of New York. So it's not just the library grants that it's looking at. It's looking at capital improvement grants throughout agencies in New York State. So that process takes an additional number of months. Last year was the largest allocation of construction aid the state had ever seen at $24 million for the full state. And those, or no, 19 million? This year's 24? Anyway, 19 million. So those funds were more than anybody had ever spent before. And we received extra money in December, or notice of extra funds for our system to expend in December, which means that the Dormitory Authority didn't get approved applications until late January. And our libraries still haven't received final word from DASNY that their projects have been approved, and it's about to be May. So this is much later in the year. This year, they've made an even larger allocation to construction aid, which is great. It means
you're cutting out, folks.
Oh, sorry. Uh-oh. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, it's coming in and out, though.
Okay, I'll be careful. Let me check my little microphone guy. I do move a lot, even on TV. The other issue at hand is that this year we have an even larger allocation, which is awesome, but it might mean that it takes first DLD longer to review all of the applications. And then that means that it will take DASNY even longer into the year. So my hope is that you'll receive notification in 2019 by May of your successful application, but it may not be until June. This is sort of uncharted territory for us. We don't know. We also don't know if that will mean a delay in the payment. So the window, that April through September of 2019, is what we're pretty sure is accurate, but I really don't know. Okay, so if you need to expend the funds for your project in the same year you get the funds for your project for financial or accounting reasons, you don't want to expend any money on the project that you apply for this July until next January 2019 at the earliest. All right, so let's get into some of the forms we're talking about. First, we'll start with the intent to apply. The notice of intent to apply, the first page is just really what's on the website already. So it's designed to just give you information about the construction aid project and the timeline for approval of applications. The actual application is on the back side of this paper form, or you can fill it out on Word and email it in. That's actually really preferred because I have to make copies for all the board members anyway. What it includes are things that you will need in order to fill out your online application anyway. So don't see this as double work. This is consistent with what you have to put in your online application to the state. You do need to know who's in charge of the project, the library. You need your federal employee ID number or NYSED vendor ID number. Even with this, you will have to fill out a W-9. We've found out last year that NYSED is now requiring, even if you have a vendor ID number, that they still want you to fill out a new W-9 every year. You do need to be able to describe your project in one sentence. In the online application for the state, this is called your project narrative abstract. You then need to be able to describe your project briefly but completely. This is what allows the state to understand that this is actually a construction project. So something where, as DASNY's rule of thumb is, dust must fly. This has to be a permanent installation of some sort of construction item in order for it to be eligible for DASNY funds. So this is where that will come through to the grant reviewers at the state as well as at STLS. How will this project improve service to community members? This is also part of your project narrative section in the online application. It's called Project Impact. So you'll need to be able to describe the why behind your project. Why does it deserve funding? And as we know, as service organizations, the only why that's worth paying attention to is that it improves service to community members. You will also use this narrative on another form that you'll have to upload to the construction aid application portal. If this project is funded, when will it begin and when will it end? A requirement of construction aid is that you begin construction on your project within 6 months of formal approval of your project, and that you then complete it within a year of that beginning, of that start. The ideal is actually they request that you finish it within 6 months of project start, which is typically not possible. And then you'll have to apply for a continuation on your project. You can begin your project before formal approval. So far, in our experience at STLS, when a project is approved, we have yet to have a project approved for recommendation by the STLS board that then goes through my review and then goes through the DLD review and makes it to DASNY and not be approved at the DASNY level. That has never happened at our system. And we're pretty sure it won't, but I mean, it's possible. So I don't know that it could, but anyway, I'm always hesitant to say that it's impossible that it happens. Yes, exactly, Brad. So it has never happened in the history of our system with construction aid that a project not be funded that's been approved by our board and has gone through my review. But, never say never. So if you're very cautious, you can wait. You are allowed, according to construction aid rules, you are allowed to begin construction July 1st of this year and still have it funded through this year's application form. So what you apply for. I only recommend you do that if you already have other money, and it's okay that it's reimbursable funds in a different fiscal year. That's another feature of this project or program that you need to be aware of. This year's total cost of the project. The reason this says this year's is because some projects are phased and go over multiple years, but each application is treated by the state as a distinct funding allocation and has to have a discrete scope of work that these funds are used for. So this can be sort of tricky when you have a project phased over a number of years, making sure that your scope of work, the funds match your scope of work year over year, because you have to account for that at the end of your project year. Funding requested. This is just a math problem. Almost everyone in the system is eligible for a 75% match. So if this project is $100,000, you can request funding of $75,000 here. If for some reason you've already decided that you want to only request half, you may. No project can be smaller than $5,000 as a total cost. This question gets at a priority of the system. Was this project identified through the New York State through the Southern Tier Library System Coordinated Facilities Planning Program. We have a number of historic facilities within STLS that have been chosen to go through an STLS Coordinated Facilities Planning Program. If you are one of those libraries and you check yes, your project and its funding will be prioritized in this application round. And then the last question, if awarded funding through New York State Aid, will the library begin their project by October 30th? And will they complete the project within 1 year of project start? If you can't complete it within a year, you can apply for a extension. The trick here is that when you apply for an extension, it's fine. You don't get penalized for that. You should be aware that you can't change the scope. You can't limit things from your scope of work and then apply for them again in a future year. Or maybe you can. It's never been looked at favorably in the past. If we have additional money and it's not a very competitive year, it might work out fine for you. But that's sort of the trick about phasing your project. If you intend to phase your project, talk to us about it. You do need the signature of both the library director and the library board president, because you need to assure the state that you have matching funds. We need to see that the board has approved this application for funding. Any questions right now about the intent to apply form? Got it. All right, next, construction aid guidelines and priorities. You are eligible to apply for construction aid for broadband expansion projects. That includes data drops and other data-related construction. We are the first system to use that part of education law, commissioner's regulations and education law, to pay for data drops. It must be very clear for DASNY in your application narratives that there was permanent construction involved when adding those data drops. Or even though the commissioner has said that it's part of broadband expansion and can be covered and is eligible for construction aid funding, they may not approve it if it isn't explicitly constructed permanently into the building. That's sort of where you see eligibilities, purchase, and installation of one or more generators. It's that word installation that's required to make an application successful. Any questions about eligibilities, guidelines, and priorities for construction aid? This document lives on the construction aid website. You can always go get it. It's also was sent out to all of you in your packets. You are required to do a facilities plan. It does not have to be particularly formal. It can just be, what are your facilities goals? And not all of these years' goals have to be permanent construction. They can be a facility goal that will just improve the usability of space without being funded through construction aid. Sometimes you have to weed in order to make your children's space, right? Like, you can't just do the construction. There are other parts involved that will. This document is intended to sort of surface that planning that goes into construction and other facilities use. And last, we include some resources for planning use around for planning and design around use and service. So there's the library service walkthrough checklist and the ease of access reflection checklist. Both of these are intended to just assist the library in understanding whether or not their facility helps serve the public or if it's a barrier to serving the public. So that's everything required for the STLS part of the application. Now I'm going to go into 2 additional elements. Briefly, I'm going to show Chris and then the online portal for applying. Let's see here. The link to Chris, which is the SHPO online portal for applying for State Historic Preservation Office approval for your project, is right here. It's the Cultural Resource Information System. All cultural resources, and that includes everything in the built environment, like your buildings, must come through here. Do you have to say, I agree? Proceed as guest. And then once you're here, it looks like you should use this part of the screen. You actually simply go up here and say, submit. Because what you actually want to do in the CRIS system is submit a new project. When submitting a new project for approval from a SHPO professional, it's actually a consultation project. What you want is a consultation with a State Historic Preservation Office employee on the feasibility of your project. So you simply click consultation project, then start. And then the rest of this is just filling out forms. When it comes to the location, you will need to be able to successfully use your mouse to trace around the footprint of your facility on a map. That's one of the big hang-ups. For more information on how to attach documents to the CRIS system, it's very easy, you're just uploading. But for tips on how to get your application and submission to CRIS to be approved more quickly or to be viewed more quickly with fewer hangups and responses required, please go to stls.org facilities. There you'll see, of course, a link to construction aid, but also tips on how to take photos and label them and then add them to a document that you change into a PDF for uploading on the CRIS system. When the consultants at SHPO get a PDF with photos that are labeled with descriptions of how they'll be impacted by the project, they're able to understand your project more quickly and can give you a determination more quickly without as much back and forth. Every time they have to ask you a question and you have to submit your answer through the CRIS system, that restarts the 30-day window they have to respond to your request. So it really eats a lot of time. And you are required to have that State Historic Preservation Office approval when you apply to STLS the beginning of July. Remember, there is an exemptions list. You can find that here. Site work, some exterior, if it's not viewable from the sidewalk or the street, some interior, if it's not a part of the character, the historic character of the building. And then mechanical systems. Any questions about State Historic Preservation? No one on the call is, for them, is this applicable? But Corning, in 5 years, you'll have to, or 4 years now, you'll have to be aware of how to handle SHPO. Oh, can you hear me again? Okay, I think I whacked my microphone with my hand. Oopsies. So in just 4 years, you'll have to do the CRIS stuff too. All right, so now let's go to eservices.nised.gov.ld grants. You've submitted all of your packet contents to STLS. The board has recommended you for an amount of money based on what you put on that intent to apply application. Now you go to the application portal, which is also linked here. Right here. No, where is it? Oh, shucks. Oh, here. Go to your application portal. Type in your password. If you don't already have a username and password for your library, let me know. There's a guy you contact and you get your information. He says that he can take up to a week to get you your online information. So as soon as you are recommended for funding by STLS, you really need to immediately move on getting an online portal login information, or maybe even before you get approval. Let's look at an STLS application. You'll notice that we have multiple phases. The review and evaluation form, you won't see these two, review and evaluation, reduce match justification. Those won't be a part of your application. The application form is all pre-filled up here. If you've had a change in the library director in the past year, you'll, when you fill out the application, ideally it will update it, but it can take up to a year to update the contact information for your library within this system. Oh, shucks. Hold on. I just realized that you won't be able to see it like it's real. Oh, okay. So this is what yours looks like. You'll have an application form. You'll need to put in your building name, all of your address. All of you're the main library. The only people that will deal with branch libraries is the Chemung County Library District. For most of our libraries, the library building is owned by the applicant. For those of you whose buildings are not owned by the applicant, you will need to produce a lease that shows that you will be in that building 10 years after the completion of the construction project. So if you anticipate that your construction project is going to take 2 years, your lease must be for at least 12 years. You do need to know when your library was constructed, the square footage of the building, and its historic status. Remember when I said that some projects are exempted? You do have to steal the language, installation or replacement of lighting fixtures, and paste it here if you believe that your project is exempted from SHPO approval. Project details, they want a descriptive title for your project. So it can't be like the rebirth of the Wissahickon Library. It has to be the paving of the Wissahickon Library parking lot. This is where you put the library director. It's good to have an additional contact person because just in case. And then you have to give it a general area that this construction project sort of falls into. Is it new construction? Is it an energy conservation? Is it an accessibility project? For some of you, new construction will also be an accessibility project. And then estimated project costs. This can be super weird. it wants you to do total project costs, and if it's a phase, it wants you to put like different phase amounts in here. Just put this year's total project cost and this year's request for funds. Time frame. This time frame is not used in the review of your application. Just to let you, like after your application has been approved, nobody uses this time frame. They go by the blanket time frame for construction required by the project. So did you complete it by June 30th of 2019? No? Okay. So you just have to apply for an extension. That's fine. You have until June 30th, 2020. Then you hit Save Application and return to the checklist page. On any of the application pages, when you hit Checklist, either at the top, Construction Checklist, or at the bottom, Checklist, you'll come back to everything that's required to do a construction application online. Additional funding sources is just you saying, we have the money in the bank to match the funds we receive in construction aid. This isn't, oh, it won't let me add anything. You're just saying like fund source, operating funds, or capital fund. Description, 5-star bank amount. And this amount is just the 25% match. It doesn't have to be any amount other than that. Now I want to leave this page. I'm going to go to the construction checklist again. Project narratives is really where you see the contents of the intent to apply application come through here. Project abstract is just that one sentence description of your project. Description of the project is slightly longer. Be aware that people have to read this. So edit your own reading or edit your own writing before you fill this out. Make sure that you've typed neatly using proper grammar and punctuation, and have fully described the project. If you don't do that in your intent to apply application, I'll talk to you about it so that in the intent to apply, it's correct. So you can just copy and paste it into this. It's the other reason for filling your intent to apply out as a Word document on your computer rather than by hand. You'll be able to just copy and paste the content over to your application. Impact of the project, again, this is, you can paste it directly from your intent to apply application. This is how will this project improve service at your library. Timetable, again, when is the project going to start? When do you anticipate it being over? For complicated projects, this can also include some of the steps, like if you're laying flooring, but the foundation has to be fixed first, then it's going to be foundation work, then floor leveling, then flooring, then reopening, or bookshelf moving, flooring, reopening. Then your budget narrative is very similar. For anything you included in your timetable, you should be reflected in your budget narrative. I'm going to refer again to the bid you come to STLS with your application. The state does not take back money. The state does not give more money. So once this has been submitted, once the system has recommended an amount of funding for you, and this has been submitted to the state, outside of having to reopen the application through an amendment process because either the state has more money to give, which happened this past year, or because you've begun your project and realized that you applied for more money than you can use on your scope of work, so you need to add additional work to your scope. That's how you do it. But once this is closed, the state expects to give you the amount of money that you said you would use. And it will hold you to this budget narrative. So this is a scope of work covered by this set of funds. This is the other thing that you'll want to refer back to when you are finishing out your application, when the work is done, make sure that you have photos to justify that match the budget narrative. So we said the floor would be completed. We've got a photo of the floor being done. We said the electrical box will be changed. We have a photo of the electrical box. So anything that you call out in your budget narrative should also be displayed in your post-project photos. All right, now I'm going to go back to my construction checklist. The budget. So you have a budget narrative. This is literally a narrative, so has text. This is just money. What kind of service? Who's going to provide the service? What is it for? So service type is always purchase service. So this could be contracted service, B&H electricity description, new electrical service. Cost $10,000. Save purchased records. And that's it. Almost none of you, unless the library is operating as its own contractor, would not be directly purchasing supplies and materials or renting or purchasing equipment, right? You've hired a contractor, service type contractor, to do that for you. So unless you yourself are going out and buying lumber, even though it's itemized on the bid that you received from the contractor, you do not put it under supplies and materials because you're paying the contractor for that. So this is, generally speaking, always zero. Same deal equipment. If you've contracted with an excavation company, they're handling the rental of the equipment, not you. It's under their insurance. They're doing the work, and you're paying them, even though they've called out equipment rental on their bid, they're the ones renting the equipment. Now, if for some reason you're renting the equipment and the contractor is just using it, then you would put it under here. But that's very, very, very uncommon. I've never seen it. So in general, everything should go under purchase services, even if it's itemized or outlined in your project budget. Construction checklist, FS10 forms. We get a lot of questions on these because even though you've filled out your application and you've done all your stuff, your FS10 form is going to be mostly blank. This will be filled out, but none of this stuff will be filled out even after you do your budget. That is correct. You still print it, sign it in blue ink, and send it to me. In order for your application to be considered complete and for the state to look at it, you'll have to print 3 of these, sign each of them individually in blue ink, and then send those paper copies along with a payee information form and your W-9 to me at STLS through the delivery. It is a crazy form. Luckily, you don't actually have to fill it out. The stuff that auto-populates. Everything else you leave blank. You're just signing it and sending it to me. Construction checklist. Payee information form. Yes, you must remember to sign it. If you send it to me blank, I have to send it back to you and you have to sign it. Payee information form. Everyone needs to do this payee information form. And even though this says if you have a New York State vendor ID number, you don't need to fill out the substitute W-9 form, NYSED, our Division of Library Development, so not DASNY, but our Division of Library Development requires that even though you have the vendor ID number, you still must fill out the substitute W-9 form. I want to pause right here and mention this is a lot of form filling out. If you've done the intent to apply form, and done your initial application to the system, which may take between 1 and 5 hours, depending on if you have to also seek SHPO approval or the complicatedness of your project. I do hear from people, it's much easier to just get the work done than to fill out a bunch of construction aid applications. The grant is a total hassle. All construction is a hassle. Getting a bid is a hassle. You have to do that anyway. Doing construction aid applications will add between 3 and 10 hours to your process overall. If your project is even $50,000, if your project is even $5,000, you have earned $500 for the library per hour you worked on this program. I do not know of a single fundraising activity that earns this much money per hour invested in the process as construction aid applications. Again, this is aside from doing the actual construction management. Project management and construction management is a huge headache and is super all right, yes, but Carol, did your Facebook Day of Giving earn your library? So far, just your library has been recommended like $150,000. Is that how much you got through Facebook Day of Giving? Yeah, it's worth your time. Now, construction projects overall are a big headache. It's very time consuming to manage a construction project, but the actual grant application itself is not very complicated. It is a lot of managing paperwork. It's very clerical. So you do have to sign these forms. You do have to send them in to me, and I will mail them to the state for you. Next, there is this list of forms. Most of them only require signatures. We're going to spend a little extra time on forms that require more than signatures. Your assurances. This is simply a signature from the board president that says that the library is investing financially in this project, that the board of trustees agrees and will put up the other 25% or whatever matching funds are required. Certificate, proof of available funds to finance the project. That sounds really complicated, right? Like a big form. It's just your bank statement. You will need to upload your bank statement that shows that you have enough money to cover your part of the match. It doesn't need to show anything other than the agreed upon match. So if you have $100,000 in the bank and you only need $5,000 for the match, that's fine. If you have $100,000 in the bank and your project is $400,000 and you only have to put up a 25% match, you're fine. That's like the perfect bank statement, no problem. That's all this is. It's just proving that you have the money. There's no form here. You're just getting a bank statement. The only thing that isn't eligible for proof here is a written letter from, or like a receipt from an ATM. So rather than a bank statement, just a sort of like teller's receipt that says how much is in your account, that won't work. But you can just use a bank statement. It should be fairly recent or contemporary with whenever you fill out the application. So if you're filling it out in August, this should probably be June or July's bank statement, not last February's. Short or full environmental assessment form. This is required. Doesn't seem like it should be, but it is totally required. You'll have to follow these links to get the forms. You will need to open these. SEAF Part 1, SEAF Part 2 and 3. I just want to open them up so that you can see that a lot of this is still more just copying and pasting. what is your library name? What is that one sentence description of your project? What's your, where is it? So what's the address of the library? You do need to attach a location map, because what this is, you just attach it to the form and it can just be a Google map. So you can just print, you can go to Maps, Google, put in your library address. Here's the Fairport Public Library. Here we are. That's it. Now I'm going to right click on this page. So the right button on my mouse, select print. When I select print, I'm going to change my printer to save as a PDF. Save as PDF. Hit save. Fairport Public Library, Google Maps. Save. And that's what I'm going to upload to my construction aid application. That's it. Then I'll also fill out this form. So all of this you've already given me on your intent to apply application. The name of applicant or sponsor, this is all just the library's information. Now, you will have to answer these questions. For most of them, the answer will be no or NA. And that's it. And then you sign it and you upload it to your application form. So here we are, our application form. Going to go back to the construction checklist. You do also have to do CEF Part 2 and 3. Again, it's just going through and saying no or small impact may occur. If you do have an area where moderate to large impact may occur, you're constructing a new place, like you're doing the excavation, and it will change the use or intensity of the land, intensity of use of the land, like you're taking previously existing farmland and turning it into a library, then yeah, it will have a large impact on that land. You'll have to come down here in section 3 and describe that yes, it will have a large impact, but it'll be totally fine. The library is the name of the lead agency, library name. This can be the director or the board president or the deputy director or assistant director. Whoever it is that's going to be the responsible officer for the entire construction or for this form should be the responsible officer for the entire application. So whoever is the project lead on your construction aid application is who you want to just sign all of the forms as well for consistency. All right. Now we're back in the construction checklist again. Pre-construction building photographs. Like the certificate or proof of available funds, this isn't a form you fill out. You're just uploading. Brad just asked, does the Board of Trustees need to do a formal declaration as a lead agency? No, they do not. Not in libraries, they don't. Pre-construction, but they do have to assure the state that they are going to be financially liable for their match of the funds and manage the project ethically and appropriately. Pre-construction building photographs, you are just uploading. So you'll notice that when there's no form, it will just say photos should be electronically attached. This is just like on the certificate or proof of funds. It will just say should be electronically attached to your grant application. This time I'm going to follow this link. And when it eventually opens, here it is, you'll see an empty list. In order to upload your document or photos, you do have to select Add an Attachment. First, you'll have to choose a file. Then you'll have to choose your file type. Here is the biggest bummer of this form. If you choose the wrong file type, you can't edit it once it's been added to the list. You'll have to delete it and re-upload it. So I saved a map, the Fairport Public Library map, that was the smart environmental assessment form, or short environmental assessment form. So this is environmental assessment. I'm going to say upload. Oh, I didn't do anything. First, I have to choose got my Fairport Public Library Google Maps. I'm going to select environmental assessment form. Now I'm going to upload. You'll notice that it doesn't tell me anything. It's not like, hooray, you did it. It just blanks out. I'm going to view my list of attachments to make sure it actually happened. There it is. Here it is. I want to draw your attention to one more thing. The document name cannot be edited. So whatever the document name is on your computer, when you upload it, that's what the document name will be up here. So if the document name is I hate construction aid, when you upload it, it will say I hate construction aid, just so you know. All right, we're going to get out of our list of attachments and go back to construction aid. If I needed to add an additional attachment, so I have all of my forms signed by everyone, I've scanned them all in, and I'm just going to be doing uploads all day. Like that's what I'm going to do for the next 20 minutes because I've already scanned all my documents. From here, instead of going back to construction checklist, I can go right to here and go add another attachment. Now I'm going to add another attachment. I'll confirm by viewing the list. Then I'm going to add another attachment. When I'm all done adding those attachments, I'll go back to my construction aid checklist. Smart growth form is much like the short or full environmental assessment form. It's just another form you've got to fill out. You're going to, let me put it in the view that you'll understand. District refers to your legislative district. Building is just the library name. Firm, again, library name. Address is the same. Project number. Sometimes you send this in to me, you general applicants will send these in or upload them without your project number. So let's figure out where your project number is. Your project number happens as soon as you start an application. So as soon as you've completed started an application, you get a project number. Here it is. This part refers to Southern Tier Library System, or the grant project, construction aid. This part refers to the funding year, 2018. This part refers to your specific project. So mine is 7366. So I have to go to my form and I have to put in 7366. If you don't do this, they'll reject your application. We'll have to delete the document and amend it and then upload it again. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, next in line, certificate of 10-year minimum lease, legal agreement. If you own the building, by you here I mean the Board of Trustees owns the building, you can skip this. If you don't own the building, we need a copy of your lease. Office of Facilities Planning Approval. Is your building owned by the school district or your Board of Trustees? It is my understanding in the STLS system, we don't have any buildings that are actually owned by the school district. They're all owned by either the municipality or the library Board of Trustees, in which case none of our libraries need Office of Facilities Planning approval. State Historic Preservation Office approval documentation. This is optional. That's not exactly true. They will not accept your application without this if your building is over 50 years old and causes a disruption to the cultural resource. So if you couldn't use an exemption on your application and your building is more than 50 years old, we need that approval letter. And that has to go through that CRIS system that I showed you earlier in the recording. Vendor quotes, cost estimates. Here you really only have to upload the bids that are used in your budget narrative and your budget description. So for complicated projects, you might have vendor quotes from multiple vendors because you are, especially with the complete renovation of a specific space, you might have a furniture vendor, a architect or building professional who's managing the project, a clerk of the works maybe, as well as an electrician and a plumber and a carpenter. Or you may have a general contractor for all of that and you have one quote. So this could look a variety of ways depending on how your project is being managed and how you're taking care of it. If it's all going through a general contractor, including your furniture purchases, there should only be one quote. Municipal consent for site building acquisition projects. This refers to specifically exactly what it says. I bought an empty lot and I'm changing it from residential to commercial. You'll need the consent if that purchase of the lot is being covered by construction aid. If it's not being covered by construction aid, you bought it before and now you're going to build on that lot, then you don't need municipal consent if there's no change in zoning. Or if the change in zoning took place before the application started. Any questions on any of the attachments that you need to make, any of the forms or documentation that you need to attach to your application? Oh, I missed it. No, thanks. Cool. All right. When all of this is done, you've successfully finished your project. It looks beautiful. You can't wait to get in there. This is a little bit in the wrong order, but this is your final report checklist. So you do need to take a photo of all of the work that's been done. So if you've got new bathrooms, you got to take a photo of each of those new bathrooms. Anything that was outlined in your budget narrative or your project narrative needs a photo of its being completed. You also have a certificate of occupancy that you'll need to upload if this is a new building. On occasion, if you have a phased construction project that ends in a new building, sometimes the state gets confused and asks for a certificate of occupancy before that phase of the construction project is complete. So we just have to give them a little reminder. Everything's fine. There is a place in your application form to indicate whether you believe that the end of the project will require a certificate of occupancy. The last part of down here that I want to draw your attention to is the budget final expenses. These other parts, FS10F long form or FS10A budget amendment form, don't come into play until either your project is complete and you've completed your final expenses and you get approval from DLD to print your FS10F form to get that final 10% of your funding. Or if you found the scope of work and the amount of money that you received don't match and you need to amend your application. Usually this is when we applied for $50,000. When we actually did the work, it ended up only costing $30,000. And so we added a sidewalk paving project to the project and that took up the additional $20,000. That kind of thing happens. But if sidewalk paving wasn't in your original application form and it's going to show up in your budget final expenses, you need to be able to reconcile the application with that final budget. So you have to open up a budget amendment form and send it to the state. They'll reopen your application and you'll make the minor changes. What this isn't for is finding out, oh gosh, now the project costs twice what I anticipated it costing. What do? I'll put in a budget amendment form that says we need an additional $20,000. The state won't give you an additional $20,000. So opening up a budget amendment form won't work for you. You'll just end up spending more of your own money. So it's always beneficial to understand the future proofing required in your estimates and bids, because you can never get more money out of the state. Okay, budget final expenses. This is sort of the last thing I want to show you. As you're managing your construction project, it is important that you know when it is your check that you wrote to the contractor or vendor was written. That's going to be called your encumbrance date. So if I wrote you a check on July 1st, 2018 for a project, that's the encumbrance date. Here's something to be aware of. So we have plenty of money in the budget this year to do the entire project of repaving our lawn. So we're going to apply for it this summer, but we just want to get the work done anyway. If this encumbrance date for the payment to my contractor is dated before July 1st, 2018, it cannot be covered by this summer's application. It's not eligible because the state says that this is not a reimbursement program. It's for current construction projects. So this encumbrance date becomes sort of important. So even if the work didn't start until after July 1, if I wrote the check and the check is dated before July 1, this won't work. We have had instances where NYSED or DASNY has requested scanned copies of the check. So this encumbrance date, what date is written on there, does become very important. Provider of the service should match the bid. Check or, and it needs to match the check. Check or journal entry is exactly what it sounds like. Amount expended, this is where it gets weird. Let's say you wrote one check to Jimmy's Flooring for the entire $5,000 project. So, but this doesn't allow you to put in money under both grant fund and match fund. Instead, what you have to do is put in, and you only wanted a 50% match because that's really easy math. So here under amount expended, you're going to put $2,500, grant fund, yes. Then you're going to add it, add. So it'll be 7/1/2018, and this is Jimmy's Flooring, check number 1010, and we paid $2,500. We paid him $5,000, but the only way the system will take it so I've got one line that says grant fund, one line that says match fund. It equals my $5,000 project to the dollar. This does have to exactly equal your project narratives. So going back to the project budget that you filled in at the beginning of your application, if you said the project would cost $5,000, even if it cost you 10, here it's going to be $2,500 to Jimmy's Flooring under grant fund, $2,500 under the matching fund, if that's what was in my application, unless I did a budget amendment. And this is how you'll end up getting your FS10 form. Any questions on how to fill out your final budget? This will be a lot like how you fill out your initial budget. But this is the only closing reporting you have to do, is this. You have to prove that you've paid somebody and that you have the photos that the work was done. So that's it. That's your entire reporting. There's no like narrative description or anything. Okay. Any questions about the process overall? Excellent. Thanks for those who joined the call. For everybody else, I'll post this on our YouTube again for your reference. Sorry about the cutting out audio. Hey, no problem. It's fun. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later. Call me if you need anything. Bye.